Well, welcome. And feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions or anything like that, or you need me to go over anything again. You can throw that right up there in the chat box. But let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be talking today about how to resume your live workshops. Obviously, with everything going on, this is an unprecedented time, and I know many of you, I recognize many of the names. Some of you are new, but most of you have probably done live workshops before, whether it's with us on your own, or maybe you have some interest in doing live workshops. So we're going to kind of talk about what that is going to look like going into the future. So just a little bit about me. I actually work with my husband, Jim, at BAMBiz. It's his company, and I do a little bit here and there to help him on the side. My degree is actually in hospitality management. So I come from a hotel background with Marriott and Hilton, doing sales and event planning, as well as some operations. So I've got a pretty long history in the hospitality industry. And then I also more recently was into event planning, and I was a meeting planner for Elder Council for a couple of years. I met a couple of you banks. I know we've met at an immersion camp in the past. Martha, I know we've met as well. So a couple of you I recognize from my time at Elder Council, and then I also was the director of events for the Heckerling Institute on estate planning for a couple of those conferences as well. And now I've taken a step back from that, and I work here at BAMBiz with my husband, and then we have a toddler, so she takes up a lot of my time running after her. So that's just a little bit about me, and let's just go ahead and jump into it. So, you know, in preparing for this presentation, I did a lot of research and kind of saw what is the industry doing, what are venues doing. And I came across an interesting quote from the CEO of Wynn Resorts. Obviously, Las Vegas, where the Wynn is located, has been very, very heavily affected by this. And I thought this was kind of an interesting way to start the presentation. He said, "The only way to cross this river is one stone at a time, and we need to put our feet in the water before it is too late." So it's kind of like, let's take those baby steps and do something to try to resume, you know, life as it was before 2 months ago when all this happened. So what we're going to talk about today, you know, where to hold your workshop, how to get people to show up. They've registered, now what to do, supplies to have, setting up your workshop. I think that's a big one that a lot of people are wondering, kind of what's this going to look like, what to talk about at your workshop, and then just some tips on the actual presentation. So where to hold your workshop. So you need to keep in mind who's actually attending this presentation, and it's going to be people that want to go to places they're familiar with. So it's primarily, you know, adult children or the actual seniors themselves. So places that they may be familiar with, like community centers, churches, libraries, those are really, really good options because they're, sorry, heard some background noise for a second there. Those are really good options because they're places that people are familiar with, but they're fairly easy on your budget. If those are not an option, I know some libraries, you know, they won't allow for-profit, you know, organizations to do any kind of events there. Then maybe you think about a limited service hotel like a Hampton Inn or a Courtyard or something like that. Typically, those are nice options because they have fairly low minimums for meeting room rental. You can sometimes get away with not doing any food and beverage, or very low food and beverage, you know, maybe just coffee and like a couple pastries or something like that. This is also a great time to take advantage of restaurants that have private rooms. So I'm in Florida. Our restaurants have reopened with capacity limits. I know some of you probably still can't sit down and eat in a restaurant, and that's tough, but you know, the best is yet to come. So once your restaurants are reopened, this is a really good time to take advantage of those kind of places that might have a private room, because they may, you know, just need a very low rental cost, or maybe just ask you to, you know, purchase a few small food and beverage items to meet some sort of minimum, whereas those minimums in the past were probably much higher. I know here we have a country club that has reopened. They actually have really beautiful meeting space. So country clubs are also a good option. And, you know, there's maybe some new outside the box opportunities. So drive-in movie theaters. We actually have a client in North Carolina that did a seminar at a drive-in movie theater a couple of weeks ago, and people actually did show up, and he did get some business out of it. So he did his presentation. He purchased some popcorn and hot dogs, and sort of advertised it as like a dinner. And then they showed a family-friendly movie after. So that's kind of a fun outside the box thing that probably no one would have ever done before. Outdoor parks, that's another good option. We're going into summer, so that's you have to factor that in. If there's somewhere nice that maybe has a pavilion or shade or something like that. It's here most of our parks are open. It seems like people are much more comfortable being outside versus inside right now. So something you can think about in your community. Just keep in mind some of these options like the hotel, you're going to have a few more expenses because you may have to rent some audiovisual equipment and things like that. So if you can do the community centers, the libraries, the churches, that may be a little bit better option on your budget. So the number one thing is accessibility, as I mentioned. So some of these, seniors, they might not be using GPS. They might just be relying on knowing where the place is in their mind. And so finding places that are, highly visible from the street. Don't use a downtown location during rush hour with one-way streets. It needs to have, a lot of parking, no stairs, or at least an elevator that's easily accessible, restrooms, and again, use the appropriate venue at an appropriate time of day. So not a downtown location during rush hour, things like that. So these are kind of all the same things that have applied in the past. I just want to reiterate, because this may be the first time some of you are hearing some of this. We do have a free guide, which is all about how to have an outstanding live workshop. And there's more tips in there along these same lines of, where to host it and kind of the why behind it. So social distancing, that's our new favorite word. And so just make sure you're picking a venue that has enough space to accommodate, the amount of people you want to have with the appropriate social distancing. And we are going to go over some floor plans a little bit later in the presentation on kind of what that would look like and maybe how many people you should shoot for now. Having a hotel sales background, the job of the hotel or whatever venue is to maximize the space they have. They only have so much space, and they have so many people that want to book meetings there. Maybe not right now, but at one time. So they're going to try to squeeze as many people as they can in the smallest room they have, because they don't know if the next phone call they get might be a bigger group that they need to then put in the bigger room that they just gave to your small group. So just be aware that you may have to push back a little bit on, no, I need a bigger space, and this is the best time to do that, honestly, right now. I mean, the hotels and venues, they're hurting, they need your business, and it's a really, really good time for you to be able to negotiate. So make sure, you ask for diagrams of what the room is going to look like and the setup's going to look like, and they should be able to provide that to you. Absolutely, if you can, walk the space in person. Make sure it's not something weird. I booked a meeting one time for elder council in Chicago, and I'm in Florida, so I didn't see the space in person, and it kind of ended up being in a basement, which was a little bit freaky, but it worked out. But, had I seen that ahead of time, I probably would have asked for a different room. So just, think about those things and walk the space if you can, or at least maybe delegate it to one of your team members to do that. And again, there's the link to our guide there, so feel free to take a look at that. There's some more tips in there. So once you have a venue, let's talk about how to actually get people there. So there's all kinds of options. You guys have probably done most of these before, or at least heard about them. You have, newspaper ads. There's the senior magazines that you see, at the grocery store, television ads, direct mail. So what BAMBiz does, we do social media marketing to target your ideal client. we start with Facebook ads. We, grab their attention on Facebook, tell them about what you're doing, and that you'll be teaching a workshop in their area, talking about XYZ. And then it takes them to a landing page that's been optimized for conversion, where the goal is to collect their contact information and get them to RSVP. So, we've worked with clients across the US. Typically, the average from coast to coast is about $35 in advertising spending per household. So they can bring up to 4 people. Most, I would say, average is 2 people that normally come. And I do see that this may go up a little just with everything that's going on. It's a little bit too early to tell. We do have a couple of clients in Montana, in Florida, and Alabama that are hosting workshops within the next few weeks. So we'll kind of know more as those, take place. I think, people are a little nervous, and it may be more difficult than it has been in the past to get people to commit. But I'm also noticing here, at least, that a lot of people are really getting kind of stir crazy and are ready to get out of the house. So that might actually work to your advantage. So historically, it's been about $35 per registration. So anyway, that's kind of what we do here at BAMBiz. So certainly if you're interested in doing some kind of social media marketing to get people at your workshop, we can help with that. Will people actually register? As I mentioned, people are nervous. In the initial messaging, it's important that we include information that, we are aware of your, concerns, and that protective measures will be taken to ensure, your health and safety during this event. So I think it's important to just address that concern right up front so there's no questions later. So once somebody registers, now what do you do? This is absolutely the most critical thing. Otherwise, you are throwing your money away if you do not do this. So within 24 hours of somebody registering for your workshop, you need to call them and get them on the phone and confirm their registration. If you don't do this, again, you're just throwing your money away. This is really important. People are going to be nervous, and you need to have somebody that can reassure them. So whoever's your best go-to point person at your firm that's really, really good on the phone, that's the one that needs to call. It needs to be someone that can soothe them, reconfirm their, that they're going, how many people they will have with them. That's important for the seating, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then let them know that you will contact them again 24 to 48 hours before the event, just to make sure that, they don't have any, no fever, no signs of anything. And I think that's another way to just kind of reassure them that you are taking their health seriously, and that you don't want anything to happen at this event. So I wouldn't go overboard with talking about, safety and this and that, unless they specifically ask you. So if they ask, oh, will people be spread out, things like that, they will. And again, we're going to talk about that shortly, but I wouldn't go into too much detail unless they specifically press you for that. And just remember, whoever's answering the phone and whoever's making these calls, they need to stay really positive. Everyone's going to be nervous, and especially you're, serving and potentially at-risk sector of the population. So they're going to be even more nervous. So just be aware of that and make sure the person on the phone is really positive. So the second call you should make to them is 24 to 48 hours prior to the event start. Again, you have to do this, because if you don't do this, you're just throwing your money away. People think, oh, I just signed up for something online and then I forgot about it. So just make sure this is a priority. Ask them the basic health and safety questions that we pretty much all get asked, and we see the signs, every time we walk into the grocery store. If you have a, fever, cough, do not come in here. So just as a courtesy, ask them that question. People generally will appreciate it. Reconfirm again who's coming, and then the basic event information. You may want to give them some of that information on the first call as well, but where to park, things they need to bring with them. Sometimes people want to know even like what to wear, because they may not have ever been to something like this. So any information that you think would be helpful, just go ahead and provide that. Then once we get to the day of your event, there are a few supplies you're going to want to have on hand. So you want to set up a firm table right in just inside the front door, or probably right outside the front door would be a better. Some antibacterial wipes, because it's like when you go to the grocery store again, they wipe the carts for you, but you kind of second guessing like maybe I should just do another wipe myself just to be safe. So just provide antibacterial wipes if you can. I know they're hard to find. Try to find them. And if not, maybe just some spray and like a paper towel that your team member can have available to kind of wipe down their place before they sit down at the table. And then hand sanitizer, get everybody to use that before they walk in the room. You don't want any dirty hands in your meeting. And then have already out on the tables your brochure and business card. I think if you already have it out, people are more apt to take it than when they're handed something. I know right now when people are trying to hand me stuff, I'm kind of like, well, I just see your hands on it. Now I see my, I'm touching it. So it would be better if it was already, there on the table. Same with the intake and evaluation form. Have a pen there so they can take notes. And then if you would like to provide a printout of your PowerPoint, that's always helpful. So they're not trying to like furiously write notes as you're talking, but that's totally up to you. And then you'll want to have for your staff person that's helping you with the event, a list of attendees, and then some masking tape that we're going to mark off where the speaker needs to stay in a certain area so they're not getting too close to the attendees. And then a clipboard for scheduling appointments, optional supplies, masks. Like, let's talk about a lightning rod topic. I'm here in Florida, as I said, we're pass holders to Disney. Disney's already said when you go back in, you're going to have to wear a mask. And I don't think I've ever seen so many polarizing comments on a blog in my life as when they made that announcement. It's just, some people think they work, some people don't. It's up to you. See what what's going on in your state. Here in Florida, the governor's kind of said we would like you to wear them, but we're not enforcing it if you don't. Some states, I have family that's in Illinois, they have to wear the mask when they go to the grocery store, or I'm not sure what the repercussions are, but everyone's doing it. So I think this is something that you're just going to have to feel out your jurisdiction and kind of see what the culture is. Personally, I think the workshop would have a little bit better kind of communication and flow if people were not all wearing masks. And I think if you follow proper social distancing, they're not as necessary. So I would try to, just host it as you have in the past, if at all possible. But it may not be a bad idea to have them on hand. If people want to take them, then they can. I would say you may want to think about having your team member that's scheduling the appointments, not you presenting, but the person that's, kind of there as the point person, checking them in. That person, you may want to have a mask on them because they will be getting very close to those attendees, and it may make the attendees feel more comfortable. They do have a see-through mask, which is actually really cool. This is on Etsy, and there is a link for it. If you download the handout of the presentation, there's a link for it there. It's like $10 or $15, and that's kind of a fun way that at least people can still see your smile through the mask. So setting up your workshop, now this is more the logistics. After you've found the venue, you've got your supplies on hand, now what does it look like, actually boots on the ground? What's this gonna look like? So don't feel like you need to memorize all of this. I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm an event planner, so I like this stuff, but please don't feel like you need to know every detail of this. These are just kind of things that would be good to know, or feel free to have your staff member or whoever's answering the phone and maybe taking these calls from attendees, have them watch this so they can answer these questions if they're asked. That's the primary goal here. So the first thing, if you can, try to have no tablecloths. They're supposed to wash the tablecloths between groups. I'm sure like 99% of hotels do, but you may just want to say no tablecloths. That way attendees can just wipe down their seat and it's clean. Have a microphone for whoever's speaking, most likely you as the attorney, so your audience can hear the presentation and you're not having to shout, because obviously the more you shout, the more droplets are coming out and it may start making people nervous. So have a wireless lapel microphone for the speaker. And that is going to be an extra expense. You'll want to make sure you order that, but it's well worth the money. Most likely, the venue staff is going to be serving coffee and other items, whereas before attendees could go over and dispense their own coffee. A lot of places are saying no, we have to have a server there that is doing that. So that's going to be something new that you may not have seen before. That person will probably be wearing a mask. And same thing with water. Typically, there's not going to be pitchers on the table anymore. It's going to be a staff person that's dispensing it from either a jug, or you can just do individual bottles of water. There's a little bit more expensive that, but personally, I think that's a little bit easier. So I'd probably do something like that. If you do some at the library, I mean, just buy a case of water at Sam's Club and bring that in or whatever. That's a couple bucks, and it's well worth the hassle. So let's talk about actual room diagrams and setups. So there's basically 3 setup options. This is called classroom, and these are, as you can see on the left side here, just rectangular tables with 2 chairs at each one. So the front of the room is at the top here. That's the projector, that's the screen, and a podium. This is set up for 12 people. This is a 1,000 square foot room. This is just an example. In the past, a 1,000 square foot room could probably fit about 30 people. So this is, you have to cut, the capacity is about in half or less from what they used to be. So we want to put a line on the floor here where the presenter should stay in front of that area while speaking, and keep that, minimum 6 feet, ideally maybe 7 or 8 feet away from the first tables, just so those people aren't, getting too nervous. And then this is 6 feet between each table, 7-foot aisle there, and that's set for couples. So of course, if you have singles, you're gonna have to just put 1 person per table. But overall, this is a pretty easy setup. This is a way to get 12 people in a room. 1,000 square foot room is pretty standard size. Most hotels would have something at least this size or larger. And this would account for putting any refreshments and the firm's table outside in the hallway, because there's just not room with this particular setup. So this would be my first choice. If you're gonna do a workshop, to do a classroom, it gives them a table where they can actually, take notes. You can put all your materials on the table when they sit down, and no one's really getting, particularly better or worse seat. They're all pretty good seats. So this would be my first choice. Would be a classroom setup. Another option would be round tables. So at Elder Council, we did most of our meetings like this because they were, encouraged networking a little bit more between people. So that would be another option. You will have some people that probably don't want to share a table. So this is, these are 6-foot tables, set 4 people at each table. So 2 couples on each side. Obviously, if you had a single, you would just put 1 person on that side of the table, and then 6 feet between tables. So it's up to you. If you've had workshops in the past and you find that people like to network with each other a little bit and kind of share ideas and things, then you may want to go with something more like this. If you're focused more on it just being an academic type setting where they're only learning from you and not particularly engaging with other people in the room, then you would want to go with the classroom setting. This is a little bit larger room, but this is set for 20 people. So you can fit a few more in if you do a larger room, obviously. Same with having a line on the floor for the presenter, and then refreshments should be outside. Third option would be theater setup. So that's no tables, just chairs. This would be a good option if you do have a smaller room. So this was the 1,000 square foot room that we used in the first example. This is set for 22 people. This is a little tight, but it does meet all the requirements. You can see, the people in the back are pretty close to against the wall. Obviously, if there's a 1,200 square foot room or something the venue has, that would probably work a little bit better. But this would be a good option, again, if you are using a smaller space. Like if you only had 10 people, you could probably fit that in a 500 square foot room. So it just depends on the venue you pick. This one is slightly more uncomfortable for people trying to take notes because they're going to be writing on their laps. So this would not be my first choice unless you were really limited on space. So same requirements, tape line on the floor. And if you do have singles, you're going to need to rearrange the seats a little bit. So, speaking of attendance, you're going to have to consult your state guidelines. So, the White House guidelines, which some states are following, kind of closer than others. Once we're in phase 2, that allows for gatherings up to 50 people with appropriate social distancing measures. Each state, again, is a little bit different. So we're not quite there yet in Florida. I think we will be within the next week or two. Right now we're at a maximum of 10. So it doesn't really matter how many people you have. It's really important that you can connect with and create relationships with them. So I would shoot for no more than probably 20 people, because I think right now any more than that, people are just gonna feel a little bit nervous. So 15 to 20 is a good goal to shoot for. And do keep in mind that just because 20 people register, not all are gonna show up. We usually have about a 20% drop-off rate. So you may wanna, aim for 25 RSVPs and that'll get you 20 people in the room. So I think less is kind of more right now. And those people that do show up, they're sort of making the sacrifice. They're going out and doing this. So I think they're very invested in what you have to say. And those are, hot leads, as we would say. So just as far as what to talk about, we're getting near the end of our time, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but just make sure that you're talking about things that are kind of true to you and you're passionate about them and you can clearly communicate them. If you are a caregiver for a loved one, tell people that. That's why you got in this business. Use examples of past clients you've helped. We have a client in Montana, and he's so good at this, about telling examples of families that he's helped. And he's signing people up like this because people are like, oh yeah, my situation's similar to that, So just keep that in mind. There's a little bit more about this in the free Outstanding Workshops guide, which I have a link to at the very end as well. So you may want to go through that, but just a few tips here. We also provide a free elder law presentation that can be customized for your firm. It does have some examples and client stories in it, which you'll probably want to tweak those a little bit so they make sense for you, but that is available. Feel free to download that. And then again, I'm going to go through this super quick because we're at the end, and if anyone has questions, please go ahead and type those in now. I'll be happy to answer them. But just kind of some tips on how to really take those people that you have in the room and turn them into clients. So it all boils down to, you're educating them, you're making commitments to them, and you hope, that you have given them enough information that they want to, pay you back in return and at least sit down with you for a consultation. In a workshop, a 1-hour workshop, 90-minute workshop, whatever it is, there's no way you can go over everyone's situation. So it's going to be a broad overview, and you want to get them into that consultation or initial meeting or whatever you call it to really find out what their situation is and how you can help them. So that's the number one goal. That's kind of what these steps go through here. I will let you just read them on your own so I don't have to go through each one, but this is a good kind of refresher, especially if you've taken a little break from these for the last couple of months, on how to kind of get back in the mindset of generating business. So Bambiz, again, we are a full service marketing agency. We primarily have in the past filled live workshops for our clients. We also offer webinar options to fill online workshops now, with the change. That's actually been going well. I see a couple of you on here that have done that with us. We offer SEO services, social media management, e-newsletters. So love to chat with you more if you are interested in doing any of those things. Here's those resources I mentioned. So we have our presentation template. Again, that was sent out in the email, a link to this, so you should be able to access those. 8 tips to host outstanding live elder law workshops. We created that guide before all of this, but it all still applies. And then boosting your business using online workshops is if you did want to go the webinar route. which some of you, California, some of those states, I know it might be a while before you're able to do this. So it may be better to go the webinar route for you. And there's some tips there. So, okay, I see a question. We are considering an event in the fall, looking at virtual as well as on-site. What would your concerns be? So, I mean, the fall, I think will be okay. It depends what part of the country you're in. And when you say looking at virtual as well as on-site, do you mean actually live streaming the event that's happening in person, or having it like separate, like an on-site and then a webinar at a later date? And then Banks, you asked about advertising for webinars as successful as advertising for live seminars. Cost per registration, yes, is about the same. So it's about $35 a household. I think the conversion is a little bit tougher just because you don't have that person in the room right in front of you. So the key would be in the follow-up. So Banks, if you have somebody really good in your practice that can call all those people, we do have a client. I know Banks, I think you're in somewhere in Alabama area. We do have a client in Alabama that's like, okay, we have another one, not in Mobile, but somewhere else in Alabama that's phenomenal with the follow-up. And actually, as soon as people download or, sign up to watch the webinar, I think theirs are recorded. I don't think theirs are live. So it's like an on-demand thing. People watch it, they follow up with them, and they, do everything they can to get them scheduled. And I know they've had several consultations that have come out of it. So cost per, registration is about the same. And yeah, that's what I was thinking of, Bill Miller. So they're doing really well with it. So yeah, maybe, ask him if he has any tips or advice, but yeah. Okay, and then back to the other question about the virtual and on-site. So personally, I do like having the live events where people are in the room. We used to do this with other council. We would, have a live stream option and an in-person option. I think the live stream, people are a little bit more distracted. So I don't know if you're at the point that you can have a live event. I would try to have the live event and see how it goes. If you don't get people to sign up, or the people that are coming are not quality people or something like that, maybe you look at doing a webinar option instead. But I don't know that I would try to combine those. And some of that's honestly, it's just really hard to live stream from venues. There's always internet issues. I mean, I did this like all over the country in all different hotels. We tested a million times, and they're inevitably on that day, something would go wrong and the internet would go out, or, something would always happen. So I don't know that I'd try to do, maybe like record your live event, and then you could later have that as a downloadable option. Blake West, thank you. Bambiz has my 2 seminars set for tomorrow full. Do not wait until fall. Blake, remind me, where are you located? North Alabama. Okay. So Alabama, you guys are rocking and rolling there. So come to the South, everybody. We're open for business. So yeah. So Bill Miller says, getting people scheduled is much more of a challenge with the recorded workshop. Bambiz has been great at getting people to sign up, but the live workshop's much better. People give us bad phone numbers, and many just do not answer the phone. I'm anxious to get back to live. You put webinars, but I think you meant live workshops. So, I mean, obviously having a captive audience is, that's the key to this whole thing. And you guys know that. And it's much easier to, create relationships that way. I think the webinars are a good kind of interim. I mean, you have to keep business coming. You can't just totally shut down, even though, we, in a sense, the country has shut down, but I mean, you have to do something to keep your business going. I think the webinars are kind of good in the interim. I think it could be something where that's like a supplement to maybe your live workshops. Maybe you only do 1 workshop a month, and then you do, a webinar the second part of the month, or I don't know, that's something that you'll have to kind of, each area of the country is a little different. You'll have to kind of play around with it and see what you think. But yeah, if you're open for business, I wouldn't wait till the fall. I mean, Universal is opening here next week. Disney is opening in July. Um, again, we're in a little bit more, we're in an area that's heavily dependent on tourism, so things are opening probably a little bit quicker than in other places. But if you're able to, go to a restaurant and things like that, try to get some people to sit down for a workshop and feel comfortable based on the things we talked about today, that you're not doing anything risky to put their lives in danger. You are, being as responsible as you can, making sure you are following social distancing. If you want to provide masks, provide hand sanitizer, provide antibacterial wipes, and, in some sense, we have to keep moving forward as much as we can. So, all right, well, that concludes our time here. There's not any more questions. If there are, feel free to email those in. Thank you so much for your input. Thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to hopefully you resuming your live events soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.